Howdy, all. We are entering draft week, uh,
Hey.
which is the highlight of any hockey fan, but we have to start the show because it dominated the sports. It dominated sports on the weekend. Game 7 of the NBA Final. Cavs, Warriors.
There's what, 30 million viewers? 20 to 30 million?
I saw like an 18.9 rating, which, I mean, I think it was like 5 times what the NHL drew for Game 6 of San Jose Pittsburgh, which is a story in and of itself.
Game 6, I think, was 6 million viewers for the NHL. So compare that to 30
Well,
million.
I mean, to be fair, there were no wives of anybody from the Stanley Cup going on Twitter saying that the sport was fixed. So, I mean, that does.
She's allowed to complain, though. She's allowed to complain. I mean, I
But
think
that does increase viewership. That does.
Yeah, well, it helped that there was lots of other analysts and commentators had some things to say where it's a whole nother
I mean,
topic. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, it's nonsensical, but it does get people to tune in to sort of see for themselves. Not that they weren't going to get a big rating, but they would, you know.
It's the LeBron, Steph Curry story. It's the NHL never once, I don't think, will ever try to get 30 million viewers because it'll never happen. But that's an impressive number. That's a very, very large number.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's like, I mean, I have sympathy for the, citizens of Cleveland. They hadn't won I know they didn't win since it was in the '60s, the NFL championship before it was the Super Bowl. They haven't won a World Series since 1948. So they've had a long, long stretch. And Russ and I can attest to the pain that causes. 54 years for Russ, 49 years and counting for me. Buffalo hasn't won anything since the AFL in '64-'65. You can feel the pain, but the thing is, I don't like LeBron. I never have. He's a great player, no doubt about it. He's one of the best players maybe in NBA history. And he's a good guy. He's not a jerk. But I was rooting for Golden State. There's something about Golden State.
Are you a Steph Curry type of guy?
No, it's funny because I'm a Celtic fan, but I'm not a big NBA fan. I was a Celtic fan back in the days of Larry Bird and Kevin McHale. But when Jordan came around, I liked Jordan. I liked the Bulls. I rooted for the Bulls over the Pistons or the Lakers or the Knicks. When the Celtics came back, I liked them. I didn't like the Heat with LeBron and Bosh and Wade. I didn't like the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. So I sort of pick and choose those teams that are dynastic. I sort of liked what Golden State was, but you can't take it away from Cleveland. I mean, Golden State gave it away. They were up 3-1 and they blew it.
They did. I like LeBron. I have no problem with LeBron. I think he's great. The problem that I always have is when people want to compare players, like if they bring up Dr. J, they forget Dr. J played 5 years in the ABA. He didn't get into the NBA until he's 26.
Right.
So then when people want to say, well, he's better than Dr. J, it's like, wait a minute. Did you see Dr. J in the ABA where those were his best years? And the answer is usually no. I did. And so, I have a problem with that. But I have a fleeting, quick LeBron story. Years ago, I got a call from Upper Deck, and they said, hey, we're doing a photo shoot with LeBron James. We know you're near Mitchell and Ness. Can you get to them and get us a Austin Carr throwback jersey? And I'm like, I guess if they have one. And I went there, and they had one. And so I bought it, sent it to them. They gave me the money back, and LeBron used it in his first photo shoot for Upper Deck. That's as close as I ever got to LeBron.
Wow.
I like that. That's a good little story.
No, and I am by no means a somebody who watches golf, but what happened in the final round of the U.S. Open yesterday is something that I think all sports fans, and in particular hockey fans with the growing officiating footprint that's going on, I think have to sort of be forewarned about. I mean, we got a little bit of that in the playoffs this year, and basically Dustin Johnson, there was a situation, and I don't know the particulars, I just know what I had followed on social media about, but Dustin Johnson had done something that they thought he would be penalized a stroke for later in the final round of the U.S. Open. And you should have seen the number of golfers who went on Twitter and said that what the USGA was doing to Dustin Johnson in terms of his mental makeup as he's trying to finish the final round. I mean, it was Jordan Spieth and it was a couple other guys who came on and said, this is crap. Either give him a ruling or one way or the other so he can clear his head. He ended up winning. But that kind of stuff, I mean, that sort of officiousness is just, I mean, that doesn't belong to us.
The problem is it's an antiquated rule, and they wait until afterwards to take it up with the player. So then he had to go like 5 holes, knowing that he had to win by more than one shot because he was going to probably get penalized a shot, which I think in the end they didn't penalize him. But
right.
The idea they should do it on the spot.
I thought they did penalize him.
I'm not sure, but he won it.
That doesn't matter. He won.
Right. I mean, in the end,
he did win. I kind of laughed because I thought to myself, boy, this is the most pressure any golfer has ever been under. Like, it's just like, they have pressure when they're going down to the last hole. We've seen guys sort of blow things, but I don't think this was all that big of a deal mental pressure-wise, but I don't think it's fair either. I think they should do it on the spot. Well,
if the USGA judge was named Fraser, and since Dustin Johnson is the son-in-law of Wayne Gretzky, then he wouldn't have to worry. He wouldn't have had to worry about the call because they would have given him, the right call. So if he had drawn blood or something like that, no problem.
Going back. Hold on. Never live that down, will he?
No.
At least he's not talking about the other stuff, so that's good.
Okay, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, June 20th, 2016.
I'm Jillian Fisher.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We may be joined by Ackland a little later in the show. Want to start off with some news that came up over the weekend, popped up, and seems to be in wide circulation right now regarding the people that we watch on television. Sportsnet took over Hockey Night in Canada's coverage a couple years ago with their 10-year contract, and one of the things that they did in terms of changing the broadcast over was to bring in George Stroumboulopoulos to host Hockey Night in Canada. They kept Ron MacLean on. He was doing the first intermission with Don Cherry as he coach's corner and hometown hockey, but George was the main host of the broadcast. Well, it's come out. It came out over the weekend that Sportsnet is reversing that, and they are going to go back with Ron MacLean as the host. I don't know whether that means that George is completely out of the broadcast or what, but they haven't specified that, and apparently a lot of these announcements with Sportsnet are not going to happen until after the draft. But, Russ, what do you think of this about-face by Sportsnet?
I think it's about the show changing, what it changed to, what I think a lot of people didn't like about it. I don't think it's all on Strombo, but I just think in general when they made that change, they were sort of leaving Ron MacLean behind. Yeah, they sort of put him in that other secondary role when they gave him the, what was it, the weekend, whatever. I forget the name of the segment, but he would go to a city and talk about it, and that would be the function of the game, and they gave him something else, whatever that was.
Hometown hockey.
Yeah. But let's face it, I mean, that was sort of sending Ron out to pasture, and he's better than that. And so I think at the end of the day, they looked at things and said, well, this didn't work out the way we'd hoped. I know that everybody looks at the Canadian teams not making the playoffs as a part of it, and it was, but I also think it's hard to pass on a Ron MacLean when you could put him back in if your ratings are down. And so at the end of the day, I think they threw him in there, and they're making the right decision here. I feel bad for Strombo. It's not like he did anything wrong, but he was trying to sort of change the course of a show that had been on the same course for I don't know how many years, right, 30 years or whatever, and it just didn't work. People didn't really want it. They wanted it to stay the same, essentially. They do want technology upgrades. They do want other things, but they want the identifiable people to sort of stay in their roles because that's what they're comfortable with. That's the way it reads to me.
Now, Jillian, I don't know how much you get a chance to see. I mean, you would see it on NHL Network on the weekends. Sometimes they would broadcast the Leaf games. I'm not sure how much you saw of Strombo as the host of Hockey Night in Canada. But what did picking up what you saw on social media, what do you think of what happened or what's being announced?
Well, I hadn't seen enough to have a strong enough opinion. I really hadn't, but it seemed like there was just this overhaul that they're trying to do, and I know we had talked about maybe bad ratings, budget cuts, and it seems like maybe somebody is taking a fall for something that is there's a larger issue. That's really what and that's the sense I got from a lot and social media too. That's the feeling that I'm getting, is that people feel there's a larger issue and that this one person, even multiple people, won't fix the root of the problem, which
right.
There's a lot going on. The one I had said earlier was you can't fault them for all Canadian teams not making the playoffs.
Right.
I know there's more than that, obviously, but and just like social media too, because even if I didn't know him beforehand, if you're scrolling through and you're looking, people are getting the sense that this is more than just one person.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit unfair. I really do. I mean, I think he's very knowledgeable about hockey. I've only met him a couple times. I don't know him really well personally, but seemed like a nice guy and very knowledgeable about the game. I think there was that resistance in terms of Ron MacLean being around for 20 some odd years, and they started to limit the amount of time on Coach's Corner. They cut it down to about 5 minutes, where it was a little more wide ranging. That I'm sure that developed a little bit of a bounce back from some people, but I think in a way, they're going to keep Don Cherry around doing Coach's Corner until he doesn't want to do it anymore. So but I think they're trying to manage it because sometimes it goes a little far afield. But I don't think he was the problem. I think he did a good job. I think it was more the fact what you just said, Julian. You had the product in Canada for the last 2 years. 2 years ago, I think 3 Canadian teams made the playoffs.
Not a lot.
None did, and their main breadwinner, the Toronto Maple Leafs, their opening game on almost every Saturday night, were dead last in the league and trying to do it.
Yeah.
So, which justifiably so, because that's the only way that you can really successfully rebuild a team. So I sort of think that he took the heat and the unduly for the product not being good. So I don't know if Ron MacLean in and of himself will bounce back the ratings. Austin Matthews being drafted by the Leafs, Steven Stamkos possibly going to the Leafs. If the ratings go back, Sportsnet's going to say, oh, it was Ron MacLean, or oh, it was George. No, not necessarily. It was the product.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good time for them because, like you said, those are two huge things, and you can feel like looking at social media again. You can feel the buzz for this Leafs team just on social media alone. If you're following any type of hockey bloggers, writers, anybody, you can feel this excitement for this team. So a bump in the ratings should be expected at this point. If they don't see a bump in the ratings, that's a problem.
Right. Okay, moving on. News from the weekend. Pavel Datsyuk makes it official. He holds a press conference in Detroit saying that he's retiring from the NHL, that he's going to go play in Russia, probably one more year. This, Russ, puts the Wings in a difficult position because 35 and over contract, another year at $7.5 million cap hit. Now, the money won't be a consequence because he's not being paid because he's not playing in the NHL, but the cap hit remains because it's a 35 and over deal. So this is something that Kenny Holland, the general manager and VP of the Red Wings, has to try to move, and he's saying he was interviewed this morning and said, well, I don't particularly want to give up any of my young assets who might be able to play for the Wings for 10 years. I'm not going to give them up just to clear $7.5 million in cap space. Well, I hate to tell Mr. Holland, but you're not going to give up your young assets. You're not getting rid of $7.5 million.
Right. It's going to have to be the way. It's either happening that way or you're stuck with the cap hit. I think being stuck with the cap hit is worse than getting rid of a young asset. And I'm the guy who wants to keep young assets, but when you have the cap barely going up, and they didn't have a particularly great season, I don't see what the options are. Now, if he's deciding to, and this could be his way of saying this, Mike, that they're sort of taking a step back to retool to get back into the draft in a heavy way next year,
right.
This might be their way of saying we don't have a choice, we're going to go in this direction, because they might be heading in that direction anyhow. They're really close. So this may have pushed them in that direction.
Well, and Jillian, Detroit is building a new building, the building to replace Joe Louis Arena. Now, Russ, that building is opening this year, right? This upcoming season, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, there has been some thought that, they're going to go hot and heavy for Stamkos, so they're going to make big moves to, open that building. They can't move that contract. They're not going to be able to.
No, they shouldn't try. I mean, they're not going to be a team that's going to make this huge run to the Stanley Cup Finals this year. They're not. I mean, it sounds rough to say that, but they're not. So they have other things, I think, going on for them. I mean, like you said, they have their new arena coming, Little Caesars Arena, which is another thing. I'm sure that man, poor Detroit, man, they're having a rough go, aren't they? They're losing like this great name, and they get the Little Caesars Arena. They lost Datsyuk, and then that contract. It's a rough go for Red Wings fans, isn't it?
Does that mean that the sections are going to be called slices?
And you know what? I agree. They should be called slices, and we should call it the pie. That's like the name of the arena should be called the pie. So, and each section is a slice.
Well, I don't know who it was, but somebody suggested that the name of the building should be the Gordie Howe Arena, and I like that. But they're going to make money, and if of course
they're not going to do that for free.
No, of course not.
It's a tough time for Red Wings fans. I think there's a lot going on. But that's
St. Louis. I'll tell you what. St. Louis was in the same spot. I think I was at the draft in Raleigh, and I remember hearing a St. Louis writer talking about, well, it was great that the Blues made the playoffs for the whatever year it was, Mike. It was probably like the 15th straight year.
Yeah, it was over 20, I think.
Yeah, maybe over 20, and I was like, it wasn't good. They limped into the playoffs. They got stormed, and now they don't have a great pick as a result. And I said that even back then. I feel the same thing for the Red Wings. At this point, it wasn't great that they made the playoffs. Well, yeah, they've got this streak going, but they got ousted pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. And what do they really have to show for it? So I think at the end of the day, I do know they get playoff revenue out of it, but, I don't think they're after that as much as other teams are. And so I think a retool is probably best for them.
Yeah, whoop-de-doo, they got 2 dates, and they got 2 playoff dates. I mean, I'm not, don't throw away the money, obviously, but, yeah, I mean, with most teams, you have to take that step back to take a step forward again. And, they just see, I mean, to me, I'm looking at it objectively in terms, and we'll talk about Stamkos in a few minutes, but you look at Detroit, and Kenny Holland came out in that interview this afternoon that Peter Mrazek, who was up and down at the end of the year last year, and they had to go to Jimmy Howard in the playoffs, that Mrazek is the number 1. That means you have a backup goaltender who's making close to $6 million. So I think that's a disaster. And now with Datsyuk gone, and I think the lack of likelihood that they're going to get Stamkos. I mean, they seem to be the team that everybody thinks, oh, he's going to go there, and I just don't see it. But maybe
if you get Stamkos, it'll save him to some degree. It won't cure the goalie problem, because Mrazek took a step back. They still have Jimmy Howard for a year. I mean, he did well. I don't think they would kill him to keep him, but it won't kill him to keep him if they get Stamkos. If they don't get him, it will kill him to keep him. And so at that point, if I'm them, I'm looking to do better in the draft and sort of write off the season.
Okay. There was a trade made this morning, and it's probably the first of many draft pick deals. It's not a major deal. The only name in it is Maxim Letunov, who's I believe a sophomore now at the University of Connecticut. He was a former second-round pick of the St. Louis Blues. It was traded in the Zbanek Mihalik deal with Arizona, and him and a low-round pick are shipped to San Jose for a 3rd and a 4th-round pick. The deal itself, I mean, San Jose must like Letunov and think he's an NHL player. But the interesting thing here, Russ, is you look at San Jose and their draft picks. They do not have a 1st, 3rd, and 4th this year, and a 2nd and a 3rd in 2017 or 2018. They traded all their own picks, so that's 7 picks in the next 3 drafts. Is Cliff Fletcher the GM of this team? Because
you have to. When you make it to the Stanley Cup, you have to mortgage a certain amount, and some clubs mortgage more than others, and so they've got everything heavily mortgaged. And they're lucky in the sense that they're an organization that's been able to draft very well in middle to late rounds, so they're not devoid of prospects, and so that's that's sort of the saving grace for them, is at least they have some picks, and at least they still have a decent prospect pool to choose from. So I don't think they're in terrible shape that way, but we'll see what happens next year. You know, next year they might be in a position where they want to trade back into the draft. We'll see how this year goes, because at some point they're going to have to start going in that direction, right, as these guys get a little older. And so we'll see when that year is. It's getting there.
Or maybe, and you know, this is a difficult situation with players like Thornton and Marlowe, who will be entering the last year of their contract with no move clauses. Jillian, it might be at a point where Doug Wilson, the general manager of San Jose, says, we're not going to re-sign you, so if you want to go someplace else and sort of shop your wares in the playoffs and try to get yourself another contract, we will move you, but that's how they recoup some of their draft picks. That's the only thing I can think of in terms of, you know, where they are right now.
Yeah, and like you said, there's some older players too that maybe another team could get some use out of, especially if they're looking to try to have a deeper run in the playoffs. I think, like Russ said, a lot of it's going to depend on where they are throughout the season. It'll depend on what it's looking like for them come close to the playoff push, if they're in it, if they're not. It'll be interesting. I don't think they're completely out of luck, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because they do have an uphill battle in that regard, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at them, Mike, I mean, they have Mirko Mueller, who's on the rise. Goldobin could possibly play next year. Timo Meier is ready in a year or two. They've got Jeremy Waugh on defense. So Noah Rod's a real good player. Like, they're okay. They really are okay. They're in one of those situations where, you know what, their scouting staff has done a great job, and so that they won't kill them.
We talked last week about the potential for there to be a lot of buyouts, especially with the cap figure expected to be low. That number is supposed to be announced either tomorrow or Wednesday. Speculation is over the weekend it came out that the PA had voted affirmatively on the 5% escalator. So I think the figure they said was close to $73 million, which is $1.5 million or a little more than that, more than the cap figure, 71.4. So the thought was that there would be a large group of buyouts. But other than the Leafs buying out Jared Cowan and the announcement of that Ron Hextall made about R.J. Umberger, we haven't seen any buyouts. So I'm a little surprised at that, Russ.
Yeah, it's a little surprising. I think we will see them. I think that they're just around the corner. We may get them later today. So I'm waiting for them. I expect them.
What do you think is the wait causing? Like, why do you think there is that wait period that we didn't expect to see? I'm just curious what you guys think.
Maybe they really want to see what that final cap number is.
Okay.
Yeah, that and it might be strategic because they have restricted free agents who they want to sign, and they can use the argument that we don't have the cap room, so maybe we will sign you to this amount. And then once they sign him and got him locked in on a contract, then they buy out the guy, and then all of a sudden they have cap room. So I think that's a possibility. Hey, Ak.
Hello.
Hey, Ak.
How are you guys?
We're doing. Let's go.
Sorry for the delay. I'm down the shore here with my family, but I was working all day. I haven't literally left this room, so it's been kind of crazy and just lots of interesting things happening. So I am, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna text a couple people to see what I can actually talk about, what I can't talk about. So you guys continue on with your conversation for a second, and I'll be right there.
Okay. Well, Russ, there was one trade in negotiating rights of Goligoski last week. We expected that maybe there would be some over the weekend. There haven't been, but I think in the next 1 to 2 days there could be. And obviously the name Stamkos is first and foremost on that list, but I'm surprised. I mean, the things that came out in the last 24 or 48 hours. GM Doug Armstrong of the Blues said that all of his UFAs are going to market. He's not going to sign anybody before July 1st. Garth Snow said that Opozo is going to market, that they're not going to sign him or try to sign him before July 1st. We haven't heard anything on Yandel. We haven't heard anything on Stamkos. So it would lead me to believe that these teams would try to at least recoup a draft pick if they're not going to sign them or if they're not going to try to sign them before July 1.
I mean, that's our thought, but it does seem like they're moving awfully slow on it. So while I originally thought everybody would be doing that, maybe they're all given a last-ditch effort and they're not going to do it. Maybe they just figure a fifth rounder is not even worth their trouble. They'll just keep working with the player and try and get him signed and not worry about it. Like, it just it seems like the urgency's not there for that.
You're right. I mean, there's two different things at work here. There is the aspect of, okay, we got to do this before the draft, and then there's the aspect of we got to do it before July 1st. If we do it before the draft, and then you really are, then you really do have to get it going soon. I've heard things about Stamkos for sure, which I wrote about today, of getting done either like today, tomorrow, or Wednesday at the latest. But I've also heard, along with that, that there's a strong possibility that Stamkos his rights could be traded a couple times, and I've heard that too. That it wouldn't be shocking to see his rights get moved 2 or 3 times.
That's not unprecedented. I guess,
right. Especially with a player like this, So you get a player like this out there who's that big, and not physically big, but just that large. But he wants to basically figure this out before July 1st because for a lot of reasons, and one of those reasons being he wants to help out the Tampa Bay Lightning in any way they can because the sooner the Lightning know what's going on.
Okay.
That's not saying he's going to go to the Lightning. That's just saying the sooner the Lightning know what's going on, the better. And this is not a guy who has anything against the Tampa Bay Lightning. You're talking about a guy who wants to help the Lightning out. He wants them to get something for him. He wouldn't mind. It would be a good thing for him. He would be happy about that. So I think you can see him. I think that he's the first. I think he will be the first the next one we hear getting traded. Yandel, I've heard mixed reviews on. I have heard that that there was talk when Goligoski's rights were gotten, and that it could have been Yandel or Goligoski that they picked up, and instead they went with Goligoski, I guess because they know Yandel, I guess. So I guess that was the thought process there.
I guess, or look, unless the Rangers are trying to engineer a Nash trade, and if they do, then they'll sign Yandel. Maybe they're that's their last-ditch effort and hope for that.
Well, an interesting thing that Darren Drager from TSN said this morning, he reported that Yzerman has told other, I assume other hockey executives in the league that he can't go over that $8.5 million figure that came out a long time ago. That the Lightning would offer the 8 years, which nobody else can, but that they're not going to offer him anything more than 8.5. If that's the case, he's gone. I don't think he's going to take that much of a discount.
I agree with that. The only thing is, like I said before, there's only a limited amount of teams that could add that to a payroll without making a deal.
Yeah.
Right, and and those teams are, and the limited amount of those teams who have a legitimate shot at winning in the next couple of years. And in that, that's that we're going to find out. We're going to find out how much Steven Stamkos wants to be guaranteed a Stanley Cup here pretty soon. His best shot at Stanley Cup is probably to stay right where he is. I mean, he's
probably is, but it doesn't seem likely. I think he's got 3 or 4 teams to choose from. That's it. I don't think it's anything more than that.
As of now, yes. This could change though, and there's a lot of there's 8 or 9 teams that really want to get in on it, from what I was told.
Sure.
I would say.
Make his price go up.
Yeah, which is going to make his price. But some of those teams have to wait and do other things. So.
Well, and we've heard the list of suspects in terms, the number of teams. For the first time, I heard a team name that sort of took me back this morning. The Arizona Coyotes being in on Steven Stamkos. I mean, I think it's getting silly now because, yes, they have cap room, but give me a break that they're going to spend $10.5 million on Steven Stamkos. No way. Not a chance.
It doesn't seem likely. I would agree with you there. And also it's a team. I mean, it's a team that's – we could argue how far they are away from being a contender. I mean, they've got some good young prospects coming up, and they definitely need a goalie.
They don't have a goalie.
I mean, Mike Smith is good, but he's not going to be the goalie that's going to take this team to a Stanley Cup. So – yeah, I mean, they're competitive. I mean, I know Anaheim would like to get in on it. I've talked to people about that. If you want a strange name, is Anaheim's, and I would not be shocked for Minnesota to try to get in on it. But they don't have
the cap space.
They don't have the cap space right now, but
their own problems to worry about. Anaheim's got enough issues. They don't need to be throwing something.
See, here's the thing.
You got Anaheim. There is a difference, and somebody brought this up to me. It was really interesting that Anaheim has dealt with over the last couple of years. Right, is the fact that LA has become the team in the area, right? And they have taken all of the. I mean, they will always be the team in that area. I mean, they are set as that way forever. They are the Rangers of that era. Like you can never beat them.
Right.
But and this Anaheim is like the Devils trying to take the steam from the Rangers, which will never really happen. Even when the Devils were winning Stanley Cups, it wasn't happening.
Yeah, but
you also, if you they've fallen behind pretty far right now, and a move like Stamkos does help.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, if I want to get a fancy house like you at the shore, I have to sell my house here. And if I tell them, if I go tell a real estate agent that, the real estate agent's going to be like, yeah, okay, I'll wait for you like for a day, maybe two. And if you don't get it sold, tough luck, buddy. And I don't think Steven Stamkos is going to wait for Anaheim or any of these other teams to make the cap space so they could fit him in. He's not going to wait that long for them.
Right. I mean, sometimes this is considered an insult, but Anaheim is a budget team. They never go to the cap.
No, they are a budget team for sure.
Now they signed Sami Vatanen on the weekend, a little under $5 million on a 4-year deal. They still have to re-sign Lindholm. They still have to re-sign Rickard Rakell. They're probably going to trade Frederik Andersen. I mean, they're blowing the budget if they go after Stamkos, unless they turn around and flip a Getzlaf or a Perry or a Kessler someplace else. So I don't know. I'm not sure how plausible that is. I think that's almost equally implausible to Arizona. But teams like Montreal, teams like Buffalo, possibly, obviously Toronto. I mean, I think that's more likely. I can't see him go west. I really can't see him go west.
Yeah, it's a lot of travel, and he doesn't love to travel. He doesn't love to be in big markets either. So, but it depends on where that goes to. That's the issue is, at least up till now, he's been very happy, and he'll talk at length about the fact that he loves being in a market like Tampa where he can walk around. And now it depends. I mean, it's all about money at this point, probably, to a degree, but at the same, it's hard to say it's all about money. I know I'm idealistic on that. We talked about that before. But it's hard for me to say it's all about money with somebody like Stamkos because I don't think it is.
So here's the thing. I'm looking on General Manager, and like even Columbus, if they wanted to fit him in, they'd have to be $4 million over the cap on the summer cap, looking to make a deal. Montreal would be over the cap. They'd be on the summer cap, looking to make a deal. Chicago, Minnesota, even Vancouver would be right at the cap. I mean, so. You are looking. I mean, the Flyers only have $60 million, but I don't know what their UFA situation is. And that's the other thing. When I'm looking at these numbers, I don't know how many RFAs that they have to re-sign too. So
you look at Cap Central for that, which is on Hockey Buzz.
See, there you go. And so
that definitely would tell you how many guys they have to resign.
Okay.
But, and the Flyers are an interesting one too. Okay, because they are definitely one of those teams that has some assets, has some things they could move around, likes to get in on stuff like this in the past, and and always, if there's a big player out there, the Flyers you would think would be involved. But so much has changed in Philadelphia, and with Ed Snyder not being there now, and different people not being there now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to think about it. I don't know, but I do know for a fact that the Flyers were going to be in on Jonathan Drouin at the draft. If that was the case, they were going to make a hard pitch for that.
What about how much of LeBron James is motivating Steven Stamkos now? You have that story. I mean, he did like a tweet about it. He did, and then he unliked it. So you never know.
Tell me about that story. That people don't know it.
He liked it. I forget what the exact tweet said, but it was something about. I think it was like comparing.
It was LeBron going back to Cleveland to win the championship for his hometown team.
Yeah, and then he likes it. And then he has since unliked it, but it did not go unnoticed that he liked that tweet.
This is like the second or third time that there's been a.
That is the funny thing about this. I mean, it feels like it's too many times now to be a mistake, right? It just feels like he's sending a subtle message to like.
Well, and sometimes like I'm scrolling along, and sometimes I've accidentally hit that like button. So he might have like been looking at it, and like you're thinking about hitting it, and you're like, maybe I won't. And sometimes you accidentally hit it, and he might have accidentally. But I'm not saying that it was like on accidentally, like saying too many times.
Once is a coincidence, twice is a trend.
Exactly.
Third time, it's a dead freaking certainty. So I mean, not to say that I mean, who knows? We're not going to know until early July. I just think that there are indications there that there is interest in Toronto. In spite, I want to bring this up because it was interesting. Pierre LeBrun from ESPN wrote a column, interviewed Lou Lamoriello on Monday, and said that in the interview said that Leafs management is saying it's not going to jump a step in its long-term goal of building the team that could contend for years, and a lot of people came out and drew the conclusion from that oh, they're out of Stamkos, or no, you don't understand. Building that team, it does not preclude you making a trade or signing a 26-year-old player. He's not 35. This isn't Gary Roberts or Shane Corson. This is a guy who's in his mid-20s, who's in his prime. It does not deflect you from a rebuild if you sign Steven Stamkos.
I do agree with that, but at the same time, I mean, like, just to play devil's advocate, we talked about it a little bit over the weekend with some of our tweets, our texts back and forth. You know, I talked to somebody who really thought that, you know, this, not everybody in Toronto is on board with this, and you do have to question.
Yeah, but Lou's not the final say in Toronto anymore. That's the thing.
Right. Who has the final say? Right. We really don't really know. I mean,
this is the comparison I made, and I said Lou Lamoriello in New Jersey was in control. He was the guy. He controlled everything. If you want to use the parlance of The Godfather, he was Don Vito Corleone. Now he's the consigliere. He is not the Don. The Don is Brendan Shanahan, and the control and the five families is the MLS&E board.
And that's the thing. And that's what
once the Don, always a Don. You know. Just,
when you have a board, Eck, and I know this from doing some Ranger books and dealing when the Rangers had corporations owning them, the GM still has to talk to the board.
Oh yeah, no question.
At the end of the day, if the board wants something, they will overrule the GM.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the case. There's no question. I mean, especially a player like this is not a general manager's decision. A player like this is when you get into the $8, $9, $10 million range, you're not talking about, hey, we're just going to go sign this guy for $10 million. This is a corporate, bold, brand-wide decision to make. That this is what you want to do, and so he doesn't have the say in that. And like I said in that text, I mean, if he's the one going against it, which some believe he could be, he's also not going to, he's not going to make waves and push against it hard. It's just there is a theory, and I've talked to other GMs who feel the same way, that think that the Maple Leafs or anybody giving a guy like this who has some, question marks right now. Some, I mean, they're tough to say, but there are some question marks. You have to say these injuries, I mean, I don't think it's a big question mark, but it's there. And giving anybody like that $10 million for 7 years, like $70 million, feels like it could possibly go wrong. I mean, it's just one of those situations that we've been down this road enough times to know that, right?
And I'm getting a. Do you have a player over there? Because I'm getting a really bad echo.
No. I'm not getting an echo at all.
Yeah, we're hearing it.
You're hearing it? All right, let me see if I can figure out. Maybe I have something open. Yeah, hold on one second.
Yeah, just mute yourself right now.
I will mute myself. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, it's got. Yeah, there you go. It's got to be a player in the background. So anyway, X is distracting me with his wide-ranging hand motions here. I lost my train of thought there.
I'll just say this. Here's the end of the day thought. My end of the day thought for this is, this blood clot is not going to preclude him from getting a big salary. There is a thing called insurance. You'll get 75% back if he can never play again at some point.
And if there's one organization that can afford $10 million for 7 years and not bat an eye, it would be MLS&E and the Maple Leafs. I mean, if he has a blood clot problem and it costs him time or even his career, God forbid, there's LTIR. It doesn't affect them in the slightest. So they're
better guys.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay now? Okay.
Yeah, I don't. I'm
playing a little bit devil's advocate. I don't think that this blood clot keeps him out of that either. But all I'm saying is that when you're a team like this, and a player like this is available, if you're not really close to winning it, it feels like it feels like a major risk. Like, it feels like you're looking at, okay, this is a lot of money to tie up in one guy. Granted, he's a heck of a player, and he's a great player. So I mean, you're gonna, if you can, you do it. If he'll come there, you do it. But it's not without risk. It's not without down the line of saying, "Oh man, I can't believe we can't get rid of Stamkos' contract." That doesn't feel impossible that we could be talking about that in my mind. And
it's not without risk. There's and if somebody says that it isn't without risk, they're living in denial. But
you put like $50 million on the table, there's risk. Obviously, you're looking at $70 million here. So,
but you can, for cap management purposes, you can work when you have a player who's making that kind of money. Chicago, I mean, maybe the good days have passed with Chicago. They traded Teravainen. They have 2 players making $10.5 million, and so they have to be even more deft at making moves. But one player making that kind of money, as long as he's earning his salary and playing up to his capabilities, that's not a problem. So I don't think that money is going to scare away the Maple Leafs. So, but there will be another number of other teams that'll be interested as well.
Yeah. Moving on to some other players, I got a couple of things I wanted to talk about that I've been chasing down today. And these are a couple names that we haven't really discussed much, I haven't really written about yet as well. But there are a lot more names than the ones we've been talking about, put it that way. And I was talking to Kevin Allen this morning on the phone, and we had a funny discussion, just that we both heard the same thing a couple times. And that thing is essentially that a couple GMs selling us, well, I like that idea, but I've got a couple other things that I'm working on. And what are those things you're working on? Oh, I can't talk about them, but there's a couple other things. There's a lot of that going on right now, which tells you, based on my past experience at this, that there are some big things out there that no one has found, that no one has touched. And that's usually, that's sometimes the case, but this year it feels particularly the case. One of those might be Mike Hoffman, who I've heard his name mentioned a couple times in the last day or two. Mike Hoffman is a serious player, I think. I mean, he's a big time scorer. Russ, what are your thoughts on Mike?
Well, but they just hired his former coach. Like, I think he would be kicking and screaming if he gets traded, because I think a big reason they got him is to sort of make Mike Hoffman even a better player. Like, I believe he played for him in junior. So I don't know about that. I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's a low-cost player, so I think he would have value. But I just think you can't trade him with this new coach coming in, knowing that there's that chemistry there. So I can't see Hoffman. I can see somebody else. If you want to say Mark Stone, if you want to say you can get a bounty for him, you could definitely get a bounty for Mark Stone.
Yeah, no, Stone's a big time. He's a real big. He's bigger than that even.
Yeah,
I still hear Jacob Trouba a lot too. Trouba is a name that I know that Sheveldaev has brought up as he's not going to trade him, but I am not buying that too much right now. Mike, go ahead.
Well, the complicating factor here is that Hoffman's an RFA. He scored almost 30 goals 2 years in a row, 27 and 29. He made $2 million on his last contract. He's probably looking to make 4 to 5, and with the complete chintziness of that Ottawa organization, with Eugene Melnyk not wanting, being on a budget, he says, well, we're spending to the cap. Well, I look at their cap figures, and they're not. They took on significant money with Dion Phaneuf long term, but they actually traded more money away in that deal than they took back. So, Hoffman is due a big raise, and maybe it's the fact that Stone is locked up for a couple more years. Hoffman they got to pay him right now, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe they just don't want to pay him that kind of money.
Yeah, there are lots of players in Winnipeg too. Beyond Jacob Trouba, too. I'll throw this out there that I've heard mentioned. I've heard Toby Enstrom mentioned today.
But how much value is Enstrom going to have at his age? He's really just a power play guy at this point. 5-on-5, he's not very good.
I heard Hutchinson's name mentioned. Now, Hutchinson, there are more. One thing I will say, and everybody kind of agrees with me that I've talked to on the inside, and man, when you get suntan lotion in your eye, holy cow, that really hurts. There's a lot more goalies available than anybody knows. There's a crazy goalie thing going on right now beyond just what we know about like Fleury and Anderson. There's more guys out there.
But there's more goalies than jobs. That's the problem.
Yeah, right. And I think part of it also, I think the draft, I think the coming expansion draft has a couple people thinking they've got to move some goalies around or else they're going to lose them. So you're going to see. Hutchinson might fall into that category. That might be where Hutchinson is. They might be thinking, okay, Hutchinson, we're not going to be able to protect him for some reason. I don't know why you wouldn't.
RFA, right? Yeah. So yeah.
To me, Hutchinson is not. They would be more concerned with Eric Comrie, a prospect, than Hutchinson. Hutchinson's basically an NHL backup. I don't think.
But they'll move him out. They'll move him out.
But
And the other name is, from Winnipeg is Alex Vermistrov. Another name I heard mentioned today. So these are all Winnipeg names.
Well, go back to Enstrom for a second. With the way the defensive market is, and how costly free agency. I mean, there was a report today from a Dallas reporter that said that Jason Demers, who's 27 years old, a right-hand shot defenseman and a UFA, is drawing interest of over $5 million a year. If that's the price tag for a Jason Demers, then a guy like Tobias Enstrom in Winnipeg or Zach Bogosian in Buffalo, who are being paid over $5 million, you can move those guys because that price is ridiculous.
Right. What do we have prospect-wise today, Russ?
All right, so we've got Trent Frederick. He's a guy who plays for the NTDP. He's your prototypical, I think, when you're looking at him down the road, you're a top 9 guy. It's hard to gauge exactly where he'll be right now in the future, but he's 6'2", 203. I really loved what I saw out of him in the under-18s. He was a point a game there, so that was something that took me by surprise. Very good center. He actually had the second best fatigue index at the combine, which again is something that you could look at and say, all right, I could put this guy out for big minutes. Yeah, right. So there's that and again, guys who have had that before, most of them are playing in the NHL, and so they may not be playing prominent roles, but they end up making it because those are good measurables. I like his skating. I like his hard work ethic. He could even make some good snipes at times, like really short side snipes. So I think this kid's got a lot of promise.
Russ,
where in the first? He's a first rounder, obviously.
No, he's not a first rounder. He'll be a second round option.
Okay. Good.
These are the kind of guys, Russ. When you look at their bio and you look at their stats and you look at their particulars, if he gets picked at the right place, he could be, a guy like Tyler, and I'm not comparing him to Tyler Toffoli, but Tyler Toffoli had some things in his game, didn't get picked till a later round, didn't get picked in the first, I think he got picked in the second, and when he played in the NHL, all of a sudden what harmed his stock at that point all of a sudden disappeared because he's effective in the NHL. This guy, he's got the size, he seems to have the scoring ability, he's got the skating ability, but there's a few uncertainties there, and maybe he gets drafted in the second, maybe he gets drafted in the early third. But depending on where he gets picked, this is a guy who could make or break somebody's draft. If he succeeds as a second or third round pick, everybody looks at the general manager and says, "Wow, they got this guy in the third round, and look at how good he is."
Yeah, I think you're not looking at a 70-point guy in the NHL. Right. I think you're looking like at a 45-point guy.
Okay, interesting. How about in the social world, Jillian? Do we have anything with him?
Yeah, he's at tfreddy42 for both Instagram and Twitter. He's so young. He just went to prom, guys. Just went to prom. How's that make you feel? And he rocked a baby blue suit too. So he knows what's up. He's not too active though. But when he does tweet, it's usually related to St. Louis sports. Doesn't baseball, football.
Right.
Or hockey, and he does a lot of stuff with team like the USA team, UA team. Yeah. So he talks a lot about that. The one thing I noticed,
he could be a David Backes replacement.
Yeah, you never know. But the one thing is when somebody's not too active, you notice like certain things that they tweet, and he talked the Bell Let's Talk, the organization that's ending the stigma around mental illness. I thought that was pretty interesting to note because again, when they don't tweet a lot, that one tweet does stand out. So I thought that was cool that he had a couple tweets about it. So that was really, really nice to see.
That's very cool. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Again, just went to prom. Now we all feel old.
I do feel ridiculous.
I feel old every day.
You're getting older every day, Mike. I got to run, guys. I'll see you.
Take care of us. And we'll be out here pretty soon too. But two other names to look at as well that are goalies, and very surprising because these goalies were both starters last year throughout the year. One being Yaroslav Halak, who, remember, was hurt and didn't play for the Islanders in the playoffs. And a lot of people felt like that, could have been a difference maker. I mean, Greiss played well, but not, he had to play Halak well, like we've seen Halak do in the past, and in order to get the Islanders further. And the other, which I think, one of the interesting ones is Brian Elliott, who his name has come up a couple times over the last couple of days when I've been talking to people. And obviously, Elliott had the great run for the Blues, was the guy. But I think that there's always been a push to not have Elliott be the guy, and they feel they've got Jake Allen, they've got a great backup or a great 1A or whatever you want to call him. So
with Hitchcock on a 1-year clock here, and Elliott's probably his goalie. He's probably not going to have much of a future in St. Louis. If they have Binnington, they have Allen. They really have to make a decision between the two of them because Allen, sort of took a step back last year after a good first year, and Binnington has played well in the AHL. They may want to give him a chance. He's been on the cusp. I really think that they may want to move out Elliott to go with Allen and Binnington next year, have a competition, see who wins it, and whoever does, they protect, and whoever doesn't, they expose.
I think that's what's good. I think that's where this is going towards. I think Bennington is their guy down the line. I think that's at least what they feel right now. Whether or not he hasn't shown it yet, and I think that at the end of the day, if Hitch has to choose between one or another, he would go with Allen over Elliott.
Yeah.
Just because he's bigger, he handles the puck better. There's certain things that Hitchcock really likes in a goalie that he's got, and those are the things that I would really look for.
With the Islanders quickly. If they do trade Halak, then I think they're in a market for a goaltender because they do have some prospects that are a year or two away, Sorokin and Soderstrom in Europe. They have Thomas Greiss who played well for them, but they would probably need either a 1A or a 1B to play with Greiss for a year or two, and they don't really have anybody in the system. So maybe they go after a guy like James Reimer, or the market is so out there. Maybe a guy like Elliott would be a good fit there.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought too. Elliott. The Islanders really have to go after. I think Greiss is a backup. I think that's what he is, and right. I think that. And I think most people feel that way, and I think Greiss is okay being. He can obviously step in and do a great job but he's your perfect backup in the NHL. I've also, believe it or not, heard Carter Hutton's name mentioned actually around. No,
I like
I'm
Mike's
just saying.
reaction to that one.
I'm just saying. I know
back with this Carter Hutton fixation.
No. Nope. I'm just saying. Believe me, it's you know what it is? He's a cheap, inexpensive backup, and some people who don't have money right now are going to go for a guy. Hutton has really forged a nice little spot for himself because if you're a team that has a goalie who makes a ton of money and you want another goalie who can make like $1 million or $1.5 million a year at tops and is going to come in there and be a solid enough backup to play 15, 20 games, Hutton could be your guy.
Well, based on the report this morning that Rich Winter says that 6 NHL teams are interested in Ilya Bryzgalov. That might be the case, Zach. If there are 6 teams interested in Ilya Bryzgalov, then Carter Hutton may have a chance.
You lost me to Rich Winter, sorry. But yeah, maybe. There's not 6 teams interested.
Yeah,
that's what he said.
Really, I'm not discrediting the source, but I just have a hard time really thinking that 6 teams are legitimately they actually mean that they're interested.
And come on, you know an agent would never stretch the truth. Come on.
No, I actually am a fan of Rich Winter. I really like Rich Winter, and he's a great agent. So, and this is what he's got to say. I think that he's one of the more interesting people. He's not. There are way more evil agents out there than Rich Winter. But
yeah, I think a couple of those NHL teams are the Oakland Seals and the Cleveland Barons.
But for real though, who do you think would be interested? For real.
For real?
Maybe Calgary because Brian Burke has a history with Bryzgalov going back to Anaheim. Maybe he would give him a chance at a low NHL minimum salary as a backup. But
I was going to say Anaheim actually. If Frederick Anderson's moved out of there, maybe that's a place where he could go back to and be the backup. But you'd have to be the back. He's obviously going for a backup spot. And if I'm him, I would go to Anaheim because Gibson is going to be the guy we would think. And yeah, Gibson has shown that he's a little bit fragile, So if you're Bryzgalov, you're going to get a chance to play if you go someplace like that. So yeah, I think that's possible. I want Ilya Bryzgalov back in the league. He's hilarious to have in the league, so we wanted to get him back in. He's always fun to have around. So we'll take that. But we'll see. I don't think that's a. I think that's going to be really interesting to follow. I would be very surprised. There are so many goalies that have to shake down in different ways first before we get to Mr. Brizgalov, I think.
Yeah.
But there's always room for a goalie who's willing to take a very little amount of money who can play in the NHL a couple games. That's because we're at a salary cap not going up. One of the first things that's going to get chopped is backup goalie salaries, because that's the one thing you can get away with, right? So
if he's willing to take $575,000 one-way contract 1 year,
play for like the Capitals or something like that, that to me is something that where he's going to play 5 games or 6 games.
Yeah, he could find.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe it actually isn't as unrealistic as we're all thinking. That's what, like, as you guys are talking, it's more like, wait a second, maybe there is this actual real possibility. Maybe.
Well, I think that it turns on how you define "are interested in" is the question. I mean, it's like, it is, yes. Are there teams that would consider him for $500,000 if they, for sure, because there's a lot of teams in cap trouble, and backup goalies are backup goalies. But and really, if you have your best goalie right now, if your second best goalie should probably be playing in the AHL in this world, because and then coming up if you have an injury, but otherwise, Brizgalov can sit in the NHL as a backup goalie and come in off the bench, and so that's you could see that in New Jersey even. I mean, there's certain places where, I mean, Kincaid, he's a great goalie, but you really want him on the bench sitting behind Schneider for 80 or 70 games. Schneider can play so many games, it's kind of crazy. So there's a lot of different things, but that is all the time we have for today. I appreciate you guys coming on. Sorry for being late today. We will be back tomorrow on time. Everything should be perfectly fine and normally running. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.